Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to BioTouch, health condition workshops that we do every month. And this week we're going to talk about the physical and emotional connection with Dr. Christy. Hi, Dr. Christy. How are you today?
I'm great. How
Hi.
are you guys?
Good, good.
Good.
All right. Well, we're just going to let you go right into your little spiel, and then we'll come back. If anybody has any questions, you can comment in the sections, and we'll pass those on. Remember now, if you want the workbook for this workshop, that we'll teach some BioTouch points after Dr. Christie's presentation. You can go to justtouch.com/workbook and download the workbook. It's a few sets of points that we'll teach after Dr. Christie's presentation. So, without further ado, take it away. It's all yours.
Excellent. Well, thank you for the introduction. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and my background really quick. So, I am a holistic chiropractor. And so, when people think of chiropractic, they often think of the structural components of health. They got back pain, they've got neck pain. That part okay. It's propped up. Okay. Um, and I come from a more holistic perspective that yes, those structural things are important, but they're not the only components of health that matter. So what we're putting in our bodies physically, the food we're eating, the water we're drinking, the exercise we're doing, the thoughts we're consuming, the people we're around, everything can impact everything. So through muscle testing, I'm an applied kinesiologist. So through muscle testing, I can determine with more precision what's going to be the most important thing for that human in front of me at that moment. And in the course of my work over, I've been in practice for about 16 years now. And through the course of everything that I've done and learned, the more I learn, the more I see patients, the more I'm just convinced that the root cause of most conditions are really truly emotional or energetic in nature. We are emotional beings. There's always a reason for something going on wrong in the body. And I'll give you a little bit of background. So most of us know by now that mental health and physical health are pretty intimately connected, but I feel like it wasn't just that way. So Paul and Bev, I was telling you guys right before you were jumping on, my majors in my undergraduate degree were biology and psychology. And back then, people literally looked at me like I had three heads and were like, why would you put those together? And to me, it was pretty common sense. I mean, the human body, the human mind, it's all pretty connected. Um, it's only been probably in the last, I don't know, decade or so that it's really become more mainstream. But apparently I was ahead of my time. At least I'd like to think so. But now there's so much more science behind it that just clearly shows these connections. So I'll bring a couple of these points up. So when we are in stressful situations or when we're experiencing trauma, whatever trauma looks like, it can be something similar or it can be a big T type of trauma. The emotional center of our brain, which is called the amygdala, little part of the brain, runs the emotions. When that gets activated, it effectively shuts down or down regulates inputs into the prefrontal cortex, the hippocampus, and Broca's area. I'll break these things down super quick. This is not the entire point of the talk, but it's kind of fun to get some of the science in the background. The prefrontal cortex is like the rational, logical thinking brain. And so have we ever had an opportunity where you're really, really stressed and suddenly you just cannot think logically? And you call a friend and they can say, well, why don't you just think about it this way? And you go, well, that seems pretty obvious. Why couldn't I think of it? Because your prefrontal cortex is just not online. Similarly, the hippocampus, that's where we create our memories. And when that gets shut down, we just don't remember things accurately. It's fragmented. It's just not quite as clear. Have we ever had an opportunity where we're in a stressful situation or we've experienced trauma and someone else's experience or memory of it is very different than ours? I've actually, so I don't know if you guys have seen the movie, I think it was called The Cutter, or maybe Final Cut. I can't entirely remember. Maybe it was The Final Cut. Robin Williams was in it. And the premise of the movie was very science fiction based. They've imprinted this little chip in babies' brains with parents' consent, and it video recorded their whole life. And Robin Williams' character at the end of their life, his job was the cutter, and he was to edit their footage to play at their memorial service and things of that nature. And the entire, as it goes through, I mean, he can make rapists and murderers look like these incredible, beautiful human people that have done everything right through their lives just by editing the footage of what was on their tape. And people who've had trauma live with this guilt. They live with this remorse and regret over things that they've done in their lives. But then when they actually played the video back, that was an entirely different experience. So I love throwing that in there because it's just a very powerful description of just how brains are not actually all that accurate at remembering reality. We see everything through a subconscious lens of our history, of our traumas, of our subconscious patterns. And reality, there's no real objective reality because we're always coming at it from a subjective lens. So in stress, hippocampus also shuts down. In Broca's area, there's been a study that shows the Broca's area, this is the language part of the brain, that basically gets downregulated, inhibited essentially, which is why survivors of different types of trauma have a hard time verbalizing and describing their experience. And so if you've ever had an experience where you've had a big situation or a little experience and you just can't find the words for what you're trying to describe, for what you went through, that's literally the physiology that's happening in the brain. So in all of that, these things, these traumas, these stresses, they get locked in our cells, they get held onto in our bodies. If anyone has ever heard of the book, Your Body Keeps the Score, I'm a big proponent of that book because our bodies and our cells, our tissues are literally holding on to the stress that we experience every day, or even the stress that we've experienced when we were 7 years old, way back in the day. So let's just talk about how this looks with regard to your signs and symptoms when the body starts manifesting what I call dis-ease. So there's two parts of the nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic is what we've all likely heard of. It's that fight, that flight, or the freeze response. We get in that situation and we're either ready to fight the tiger or we're ready to run away from the tiger, or we freeze and pretend like the tiger doesn't see us. On the opposite side of it, the parasympathetic nervous system is that rest and digest and recovery. If we're always in that sympathetic drive, we never get the opportunity to fully relax, rest, digest, and recover. That's what sleep is for. If we're never allowing ourselves to sleep because something is disrupted in our nervous system, that will end up being a problem. Now, there's not really an all or nothing component. It's obviously a very good description of, there's this side of the nervous system, there's this side. They kind of have a teeter-totter. It's rarely all or nothing. But the point remains, when you have too much of either one, disease can develop in the body, and it can manifest into all sorts of different things depending on your history, your genetics, and where you're more physiologically vulnerable. So, as an example, if you're being chased by a tiger, though, do you really care about digesting your last meal? In a hierarchy of priorities, probably not high up on your list. Your priority at that point is escaping death, not digesting your food. So I'm going to give a couple examples from my patient population of how this plays out kind of in real life. But before that, I want to give a little bit of a background on one of the systems that I use in practice is called neuroemotional technique. NET was developed by Scott Walker. He's a brilliant practitioner. And we use muscle testing to find the emotional connections between what's happening in the body. So every muscle that I test in the body, whether that's the deltoid in the arm, psoas in the leg, TFL in the leg, all these muscles are related and connected to different organ systems. Those are connected to different meridians in Chinese medicine. They're also then connected to different nutritional requirements, different nerve levels structurally, and different emotions. So for instance, the glute med muscle, which is, we think of the glute max, a big muscle, but the glute med is actually really, really important. A lot of physical therapists work on it if it's weak, if your low back is not stabilized when you walk in space. That muscle, the whole glute complex actually is related to the hormones, the endocrine system. That's the fire element. It's also energetically and emotionally related to uncertainty and vulnerability. Nutritionally, it's related to vitamin E. So there's a lot to unpack there when you have just one simple weak muscle and lots of dots to connect. Another one would be like the pectoralis muscle group. Those are related to stomach and liver meridians and organ systems. Those emotionally might be related to more of that overwhelm, the anger types of emotions, you know, liver, B vitamins, hydrochloric acid for digestion. Those are the nutritional components to help support that. But here's the thing, is that the emotions and the organ systems and those meridians, it's a two-way street. So you can have emotions that are widespread in your life, widespread in your body, but you haven't quite gotten past. And it can impact that particular organ over time. But the opposite can also be true in the sense that you can have long-standing organ dysfunction from something that you're eating, inflammation, a disease process that's already happening in the body. And if it goes unchecked for too long, you can start to develop some of these emotional imbalances that are related to that meridian. So it's quite fascinating. So oftentimes we have to kind of work at both sides to get the ideal perspective. The other thing I like to think about is all these meridians, all these different organs, they have not only emotions that associate with them, but they're specific to time of day. So I'm going to run through a list. I'm going to try not to go too fast in case anybody wants to take notes. We can always replay the video. And it's also super easy to just do a quick Google search and find this online. But I'm going to start at from 11 o'clock at night till 1 o'clock in the morning. We're in the gallbladder time. Then 1 to 3 a.m. is liver. Liver, gallbladder to go together. And the wood element, they are emotionally related to frustration, anger, resentment, that family of emotions. So if you know somebody who's waking up between 1 and 3, for instance, or 11, to 1 a.m., think wood element issues. Liver, gallbladder dysfunction might be happening, and it could be related to what they're experiencing emotionally and stressful-wise in their life. The next time set is lung, being 3 to 5 a.m., and large intestine 5 to 7 a.m. Those are in the middle element, where we have grief, sadness, defensiveness, that feeling of being stuck. So again, I know a lot of people who've experienced grief and loss. They've lost a family member or somebody very close to them, and for weeks, for months, for years, maybe on end, until that emotion is checked, they're waking up like clockwork 3:30 every single morning. Again, we do go back down again now. Stomach and spleen are from 7 to 9 a.m. and 9 to 11 a.m. Those are the emotions of feeling overwhelmed, lack of self-esteem, hopelessness. So again, now we're not talking in the middle of the night anymore, but if that stomach upset, if you're unable to digest ideas and circumstances in your life, that's what some of this part goes into. And then heart and small intestine are the next two, 11 a.m. till 1 p.m. And then small intestine is 1 till 3 p.m. These emotions associated with lost, vulnerable, abandonment, deserted. After that, we go into the water element, which is bladder, kidney. Bladder is from 3 to 5 p.m. and kidney is from 5 to 7 p.m. This is our fear, our dread, our paralyzed will. I'll often throw in a little tidbit, even though this feels like it connects underneath the wood element of things. If you know somebody who had a UTI, a urinary tract infection, what are they feeling pissed off about? Or where is that deep fear? It's manifesting in their body in a particular way. And then coming full circle to close up the 24-hour clock, our circulation and our endocrine organ systems and meridians, the adrenals, the thyroid, and our sex hormones, those are from 7 to 9 p.m. and then from 9 to 11 p.m. And emotionally, there's that uncertainty, the non-thinking, non-emotive, and oftentimes there's general depletion. Any questions so far? Okay. So I have 3 patient cases that I wanted to describe here, and I've changed their names just to keep them fully anonymous here. Ben, a man came into my office and he had high blood pressure. Now, medically speaking, you can look up the research. The stat is 40% of people with chronic stress are going to develop high blood pressure. It's very, very common. It's not even a stretch to think about this anymore. However, on his very, very first visit, his blood pressure was 200 over 130. It's not the highest I've ever seen, but it was close. And I'm not one to get very alarmist because I believe in hope and positivity and not letting fear to stress the body more. So we started working. Now he was already on 2 blood pressure medications per day. And he was somebody who did everything quote unquote right. He ate all the right foods. he exercised, he slept well, but he had a lot of childhood trauma and abandonment issues. And as a result of this, he developed this people pleasing kind of obsession, and he had some challenges with boundaries. And so, in just a few visits, about 5 to 6 visits, we really worked hard on this emotional piece. I introduced him to the book, which I'll tell you guys about later. And the last time I saw him, his blood pressure was down to 154 over 86, and that was only on one medication instead of the two. So, again, huge component, direct correlation between getting those emotions situated right in the body and seeing a physical response in the body. Next person that I was going to give an example of was Terry. She is an older woman. She has chronic pain and constipation issues. Now, again, another medical stat is stress, just like we talked about with the tiger example, it slows the gastric emptying. So again, if you're being chased by a tiger, your body's not going to be caring about digestion and optimizing your bowel movements and things of that nature. But it also messes up the microbiome. So the bugs in your lower gut aren't even going to be as optimally balanced when you're under chronic stress. And Terry had past fears and self-judgment, and she just experienced a lot of deep pain as past alcoholic and how she may have treated her children. She wasn't abusive, but she, had a lot of guilt from her past transgressions, so to speak, that she'd never quite gotten past. And when we started addressing those emotions with the metal element, lung, large intestine related, and she started to release those, she literally released the bowel movements that she's been holding on to for so long. It actually happened in my office, and she said, "I gotta go." It was a little bit complicated, but kind of a beautiful release. And lastly, Bonnie. So we talk about the immune system. I've actually seen on live blood cell analysis with introduction of sugar, for instance, which is a physical stress to the body, or with introduction of some emotional stress, the white blood cells on live blood cell analysis literally are paralyzed for a few minutes. And so it doesn't seem like it's that big of a stretch that when our immune system, or when we're very, very stressed, our immune systems can suffer. And Bonnie had a very simple cold virus, and she's been a patient of mine long enough. She knew exactly what to do. She got all my recommendations, all the herbs, and I can actually give you guys a little bit of this. So there's a homeopathic remedy called osteococcinum. She was taking that incredible remedy for supporting the immune system and stress. Virusid, astragalus, lauricidin, which is monolaurin to help antiviral support, and then vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc, vitamin A. There's so many of these things on top of just hydrating, no sugar, rest, essential oils. There's so much. She does it all. And she was telling me, she's like, I'm getting better, but then I'm kind of getting worse. And it's like, I'm just not, quote unquote, getting over it. Why can't I get over this? And it had been like a week and a half. So Louise Hay is the person that I mentioned, that I was going to mention, come back to the book before. She wrote a book called Heal Your Life, or You Can Heal Your Body. And she's this brilliant woman who made these connections between the metaphysical and the physical ways our body manifests disease. Now, some of these things can kind of come as more obvious connections, right? So like we already talked about constipation, what aren't you letting go of? If you're having a chest that you can't get over, like what are you not getting off of your chest? Or hearing, our ears represent a capacity to hear. So what don't you want to hear if you have ear issues? Or eye complaints, cataracts, and advantages. What don't you want to see? Some of them are a bit more nuanced. She pulls out, knee pain represents pride and ego. For instance, the hip represents feeling stuck or not being able to move forward in life. Brilliant woman. I don't know how she makes the connections all the time, but bottom line is to always look deeper beneath what the physical symptoms are, and we're going to get deeper answers. So in Bonnie's case, I just listened just a little bit, and when I heard her say the words, I'm just not getting over this, I paused and I stepped back and I said, what aren't you getting over? What are you having a hard time getting over in life? And it was almost immediate tears, and she's having a hard time politically. She's having a hard time with the current cultural climate, let's say, with all the division, all of the drama that's ensuing. It's a heavy environment right now. And as soon as we brought that up and we started working through it on that emotional level, haven't heard from her, which when I don't hear from her, it's usually a good sign that everything is good. So this was my bottom line of like, the longer I'm in practice, the more I'm convinced that most of these diseases, the body's in disease, there's an emotional, there's an energetic reason for this manifestation of that. And not that structural work isn't important. I'm a chiropractor. I do structural work every single day. I love adjusting patients. I love the muscle work. And sometimes it's necessary, right? Like if you sprain an ankle, there is some physical trauma now that we have to physically deal with, the inflammation and the stretching of the tendons and all that. But then I always ask, like, yes, you had physical trauma, but what caused you to sprain the ankle in the first place? What was off balance in your body that caused those tendons to be weak or vulnerable in the first place? Because you've walked down those stairs 17,000 times in your life. Why this time? Why now? What happened? So in the big picture, and also relating it back to BioTouch, for what you guys do, is figuring out, maybe we're using a little bit of that chart. Like if somebody comes in and they're stressed, you have the brilliant stress points. But if they're stressed because they're angry, you can go down the liver pathway. If they're stressed because they're fearful, we can go down the kidney pathway and make some of those people to kind of support their health on a deeper level. So I think that's all I have today. If anybody has any questions.
Wow.
I think that will do it.
I'm like dizzy here. Let's see. Now, why am I dizzy? What organ is that working with here? Let's see. So let me ask you this. So do you find in the work that you're doing then, basically you're holding a space for people to figure out their own problem and you're just sort of giving it back to them, or do you also use the kinesiology to get more detailed with that?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
I use the kinesiology and the muscle testing to get specific with what they're experiencing. And so it's the neuroemotional technique. So they'll express what's going on for them. Of course, I hold the space. It's one of I think it's a very powerful thing to do, is just hold the space with someone going through whatever their emotions are. But then connecting certain physical points on the body, holding the emotional points, which are across the forehead, and then tapping certain elements in the spine while they hold on to those memories. It's like the more that we can layer on top of itself, so they hold that memory while we're touching different points, while they're processing and breathing, it allows them to process it and release it on a more physical level. Now, it doesn't necessarily make the stress go away, but it makes their body more resilient and have a greater capacity to handle it in a different way.
So just a little. Go ahead, Bev.
No, honey, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just sitting here thinking, I have worked with BioTouch and know so many people who have multiple immune issues that all, I mean, like thyroid and heart and my brain is not working, but all those autoimmunes that we hear about all the time, fibro and everything.
Yes.
I mean, they're just concentrated in this one little body. And I'm just wondering, wow, how do you even start with that? It's kind of overwhelming for them, especially. But I mean, it's like they're putting everything in this catch-all now. And I have somebody in my life very personally, and she's just dealing with so many of these things. I mean, what's the work? How do you work your way through that with them?
It's all person specific. It's not an easy protocol necessarily. But I do start with the Louise Hay book. You guys kind of nodded when I mentioned her name.
Yeah.
I adore all of the work that she's put in. And when it's one of those nuanced kind of things, I'll look it up and see, okay, what does she say about, lupus, for instance? What does she say about this?
Right.
And oftentimes the patient immediately connects with it and go, how did you know that I have that? And I was like, I didn't, but these are the connections that they make. And other times they don't resonate. But again, my bottom line is like looking deeper. What does it mean for you? So, and listening to find out, like that person who said, oh, I'm just not getting over this. What aren't you getting over? Or I had another patient who had eczema, but it was only on her face. And as she did some further reflection, she discovered she was having some concerns about her sister and caregiving and things of that nature. And she couldn't quote unquote face it. So it was the only reason it wasn't anywhere else in her body, it was just on her face. And
Right.
it's not always an easy, quick approach.
Yeah. Right. It takes work. I know. I kind of do the same thing as what you were talking about. So
Yeah,
we have had those
we worked with a
discussions.
woman once. She had a shoulder thing, and one day
I was
we
thinking
worked the
about her.
shoulder, and finally she just started crying.
Mm,
She had the memory of being raped and kicked in that area,
wow.
and once she was able to acknowledge it, she was able to go back to her group, talk about it, never had a shoulder pain again. So it is an amazing connection, this body and our
Beautiful.
emotions.
Oh
Yeah.
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 So we
And it stays
Release.
there until it's ready to release.
yeah, and we
Yeah.
appreciate the work you're doing with that.
Oh yeah.
Just a little side note for you and everybody out there. One of the founders of kinesiology actually is still alive and is in Tucson practicing still as a chiropractor naturopath. Dr. Deal is his name.
Oh
Yeah.
yes,
Yes.
Yeah.
yes. He's one of the original Dirty Dozen, as
He
they
is
call him.
one of,
Yeah.
and I think he's the only one that's still alive, really, or something like that. And
Pretty close.
they just made a movie about kinesiology. It's coming out pretty soon.
Yep.
So yeah, he's still,
I think it's on YouTube actually.
oh, is it? Yeah.
Hmm.
He's still giving talks every Tuesday, first Tuesday of the month here. He does it here
At
in
the
the center.
center.
86
That's
years
great.
old, still master magician, I call him.
Love it. That's great.
Yeah.
So keep up the good work. You'll be the next generation to pass this wonderful work on to
Yes.
people. Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
appreciate the work you're doing, Dr. Christy. And
Yes.
anybody wants to contact her, we've posted her website. Get hold of her, and she'll be happy to help you out. She's located in near the Chicago area, but I'm sure she can help you or guide you in a way to get help. So
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys. This was
thank you
amazing.
much.
Thank you so
All right,
much.
so we'll move on here to the next part of the program.
Good. Thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah.
Thank you, you too.
All right, here we go. Tell me BioTouch doesn't work in here. I can't wait to see the research that we did with Dr. Stevenson for the frontal cortex
Yes.
that Dr. Christie talked about.
I know. I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
It's going to be so exciting.
Yeah. So we're going to now teach you a few sets of points to help you work with folks that you know. It could be your family, it could be part of your own practice that you do, to help work with what Dr. Christie was just talking about, the physical and emotional connections. For us over here at BioTouch, we don't know all those details. That's why
Right.
we'll farm you out to people like Dr. Christie, who has all the information. We just work where the pain is, and then we let you figure it out and find the resources that you need. So we do have a few sets of points that Bev's going to teach us here that will help you deal with the physical and emotional connection. So let me move to that part of the program. All right, Bev, you're on.
Well, the first thing I want to say is I spelled physical wrong. Look at that. And you said okay. And you let it go. Okay, anyway. Yes, the physical emotional connection. So we're going to go through this small little booklet, the workbook. And as you can see on the very front page, we're always going to have an overview of the condition that we are presenting and just a little introduction to it with some information that will kind of get you involved as you learn these different sets of points. So we choose 3 to 4 sets of points that will specifically begin a process of addressing whatever the condition is, but there's so much more. But tonight for the workshop, we're going to begin with these 4 sets that we're going to introduce. But first, for those of you who are new to BioTouch, even those of you who join us, it's always a good point to go over some basic. So I'm going to introduce, what is BioTouch? We're on page 6. What is BioTouch? BioTouch, as it says, is it's a hands-on technique that uses the first 2 fingers of both hands to literally address any condition the body can manifest. And the specifically very lightly touching on the skin, it's one person touching another person lightly on the skin. That's the definition of biotouch, like a butterfly. So the lighter you touch, we have discovered that biotouch is these are communication tools. It goes down to the cellular level. That's where change begins. That's where the body can definitely begin to tell a different story. And that's what biotouch really helps the body to do. So it's easy to learn. Even children have learned and practice it effectively. This is one of our visions, is that biotouch will become a household technique that every single person in that family is capable of using and being effective with each other, even children. We see that all the time. It's amazing. It's a complement to any healthcare program, not just a complement. It is an integrative a technique that literally you can use to enhance any other program you are doing, whether it's a special diet, whether it's pharmaceuticals, if you're under a doctor's care, if you're doing other modalities, whatever it might be that you're already doing, BioTouch is only going to enhance that healing journey. So it's very safe, non-invasive, like I said, very light on the skin. It's waking the body up so that it can be what it truly is, the healer. You will never hear us talk about being a healer. So it has no levels of ability. Every single one of us is capable, as I just said, of learning and practicing BioTouch. Every single one of us. And the very first time that you use BioTouch, you will be effective. You don't have to go, you don't have to be specialized in anything. You just have to be a human being that is concerned and sensitive to other people's pain and suffering. And that's all that's required to practice BioTouch. And of course, knowing a few points, of course, but that's very easy to learn. BioTouch, it requires no special preparation. You don't have to have a philosophy or a belief to practice BioTouch. You don't have to prepare yourself or a space. You don't have to protect yourself from negativity of the other person. All of those things separate us from that other person that we really want to help. So you just have, like I said, you just have to be someone who just feels compassion for another human being. That's really what BioTouch expects. That's the only intention, if you want to talk about an intention. So there's a couple things that we like to present to you as you begin a session with a person. Once you begin to practice, we always ask that you wash your hands before you do any BioTouch. Again, it's one person touching another person lightly on the skin. It's a relationship we'll be talking about. You want to begin every session before you address any other part of the body. The very first set we're going to teach tonight is called the greeting. You always want to do the greeting. Again, using the first two fingers of each hand, touching on the skin like a butterfly. And in these sets of points, as you'll see when we start to present BioTouch, there's points on the body that will be touched in certain ways. And you want to hold those points for 6 to 8 seconds. BioTouch can be practiced anywhere, anytime, any place with anyone. It's really that you're going to have these two tools to carry around with you. So we are going to move on, and I'm just going to issue this next page, page 7, terms used in this manual. We're not going to go over those terms except for the first two. And this was that healing relationship that I was talking about. The associate, which is the one who is going to be giving BioTouch. We call this person, the associate, but the dictionary describes the role of one who is inspired to do biotouch as one often in the company with another, implying an intimacy or equality. This is one of the big aspects about biotouch. In a true relationship, both people are what? They're equal. So biotouch really allows that to happen in this healing relationship. The other person involved in this healing relationship is called the recipient. This is the person that is going to receive. Although we know that the giving and the receiving is actually equal in performing biotouch. So before we begin our first set, I'm going to let Paul just kind of go over how to read this workbook.
Yeah, so if you'll notice, every set will have 2 pages. The first set will have the title of the set. There'll be a drawing with little circles and numbers on it. Those will be the points that we're going to teach. And at the bottom of that page, it'll tell you touch this point, touch that point, okay? And then you'll notice at the bottom of that page and the second page will be a photograph, and it'll have words telling you exactly where the points are. Those points are exactly the same as when you click that little video. It takes you to our website, shows somebody doing the points, and them telling you where the points are, of which those words on the video are exactly the same as that in the manual. So you have 3 ways to learn it, and it can't be much easier than that.
Yep. Thank you, Paul. So let's get ready to begin teaching biotouch. As I said earlier, you always want to begin the session with the recipient, if you are the associate, with what we call the greeting. And I know I said both hands, and that's going to be true, except for the greeting, and that's going to be specifically one hand, and specifically your dominant hand. That's what you want to use. As you can see, there's just 2 points in this greeting. You're going to be using, if you're right-handed, you want to use your right hand for both points. If you're left-handed, the same thing. So let's actually look at the video, and you can see somebody giving the greeting.
The greeting is always performed at the beginning of each session. It's the only set that uses one hand, and the only set that indicates which hand to use. The greeting is performed with the dominant hand. If you are right-handed, use your right hand. If you are left-handed, use your left hand. The greeting is made by touching at point 1, which is in the fleshy area just below the bottom of the breastbone or sternum. Hold this point for 6 to 8 seconds. Then, with the same 2 fingers, touch point 2 on the back. To find point 2, look for the big bone at the base of the neck. From here, move 1 to 1.5 inches to the left. This is point 2. Hold this point for 6 to 8 seconds. More than one associate may work with a recipient provided that all of the associates perform the greeting. If the associate or the recipient leaves the session, or if someone who hasn't done the greeting touches either the recipient or the associate, the greeting must be reestablished. Then the session may proceed from where it was interrupted.
Okay, so we've given the greeting. And we're going to go to this second set called the metabolism set. And this is a great set. Remember, we're just giving you a couple of basic sets tonight that actually you can learn and begin to help someone. So it's really instantaneously available to you. So the metabolism set really helps the body. It gets to assimilate what it wants and to eliminate what it does not want. So this can include so many different things, but it's a great basic set to start. So let's look at the video and watch the metabolism set.
The metabolism set can be used to help the body assimilate what it needs and eliminate what it doesn't need. The metabolism set has 2 steps. Step 1 involves touching points in matching fire along the large muscles on the front of the neck. Points 1 and 1 are located above the collarbone in the soft indentations on both sides of the notch at the top of the breastbone. Points 2 and 2 are halfway up the neck on the front of the large muscles. Points 3 and 3 are at the top of the neck on the front of the large muscles. The second step involves holding a point on the front of the body and touching points next to the spine on the back. Hold point X on the front of the body is on a line directly between where the nipples would be on a youth and is 1 to 2 inches to the left of the breastbone. Another way to find X is 1/3 of the way up the breastbone from greeting point 1 and 1 to 2 inches to the left of the breastbone. The points on the back are located next to the spine, forming a rectangle around the breakover point. The breakover point is where the bottom of the rib cage joins the spine and can be found by imagining a line directly through the body from greeting point 1. To perform step 2, find hold point X on the front of the body and touch points 1 through 4 on the back. Point 1 is approximately 1 to 2 inches up from the breakover point on the left spine muscle. Point 2 is directly across from point 1 on the right spine muscle. Point 3 is 2 to 3 inches below the breakover point on the right spine muscle. Point 4 is used to address blood sugar problems and is added to the other metabolism points when needed. It is located across from point 3 on the left spine muscle.
All right. The next set is the stress and anxiety set. And of course, Dr. Christy mentioned this right the very first thing. This set will help all those physical in the body manifestations of our emotional or mental stress. So this is really a great set to use when you're working with somebody with these kinds of things. So let's go ahead and watch this video.
The stress set may be used to address any manifestation of physical, emotional, or mental stress, as well as anxiety and shingles. Hold at X, which is in the fleshy area just below the bottom of the breastbone. It is the same as greeting point 1. Then with the other hand touch points 1 and 2, which are the same points as in the heart set. These points are found by imagining a line running from the notch at the top of the breastbone to a place on the left breast where the nipple would be on a youth. Divide this imaginary line into thirds. Point 1 is at the top of the first third. Point 2 is at the top of the second third. These points may be touched repeatedly, and remember to touch each point for at least 6 to 8 seconds.
Okay. And the last set we're going to present is called the head set. And this is anything for the brain. Dr. Christy was talking about the frontal cortex and how that is holding a lot of our stress. And pay attention to that very first step that is going to be introduced. It is called A and A. Look at it. That front point is right on the frontal cortex when you're doing BioTouch. So this is a really, really good set to use for a lot of hormonal and all kinds of things concerning the brain. So let's go ahead and watch the video.
Okay, it's not showing for some reason.
Oh.
So we're going to just share it right here.
Well, there you go.
All right, Bev and I will just share it with you as it's shown in the manual. The first step, which what's interesting, she talked about the frontal lobe and the rear lobe, and we've had trauma talk before where they talk about how when those are disconnected. So as Bev said, what you want to find is A and A, as in the manual. Point A in the front is right on the forehead, right on the crown here, where the forehead meets the crown. And point B, I guess I could turn around. Go ahead, tell them where it is.
Yeah, it's in the center of the neck at the base of the skull, center of those two large muscles on the sides of the neck. Yep. And you just want to hold that and that. The second step is you're going to find a hold point, which is in the indentation on the side of the neck now. So you're moving, and now you're going to be working on the other side of the head, which we call crossfire, and you're going to be touching points. So point 1 is on that ridge that he was talking about. You want to follow that around the head. Point 1 is above the outside corner of the eye on that ridge line. And you're holding, remember, a whole point is where you're making constant contact. Point number 2 is on that ridge line, and it is in front of the ear. Remember, you're holding 6 to 8 seconds. Point 3 is on that ridge line in back of the ear. And point number 4, there is an elongated indentation. It is like a third of the way down from the top of the ear and about 1 to 1.5 inches to the back of the ear. You can definitely feel a little indentation. That's point number 4. And then point number 5 is opposite your hold point in that indentation, the side of the neck muscle. And then that becomes your new hold point, and then you're going to do the same thing on the other side of the head, all those points. And then you want to do what we call matching fire. And it's the same points, you're just matching fire simultaneously touching 2 points. So you just want to follow points 1 and 1, points 2 and 2, points 3 and 3, 4 and 4, 5 and 5. And the last step is you want to take your open palms and cover points 1, 2, and 3 without touching your hands together. Yeah. And there it is. Ha ha.
Good job.
Gee, I learned, I remembered stuff.
So it's just how easy it is. Again, the workbook and the links to it takes you to the website. I don't know why it didn't work here to watch how they do the headset. If you have any questions with any of it, just send us an email, office@justtouch.com. But it's all pretty self-explanatory. Remember, you can't hurt anybody. You can also do more. So as Dr. Christy was saying, we hold different parts of our body, hold different traumas. Once you've learned all those, just those few sets, you can then take those 2 fingers, locally touch where there's the pain. Like I told you about that shoulder, the woman with the shoulder problem. You don't have to know anything else in the manual. We could just do what we call local work. Take the 2 fingers, touch around the pained area or the discomforted area, and see what happens. Lightly touch. We also do things we call sweeps, where you can slowly move your fingers across the affected area. But there are other sets of points too. If you want to learn the whole, we have a whole manual with it. There's a shoulder set, there's a back set, there's a neck set, eye set, sinus set. So, as Bev said in the beginning, any discomfort, disease that is held in the body, BioTouch can address it without any side effects.
Yes.
And then it's going to help you find people like Dr. Christy or your own naturopath or your own kinesiologist or your own doctor. You know, you might need a medication, you might need an operation, or you might just need a little adjustment. So BioTouch is here to help you become self-aware, become aware of your body, what it needs. We don't do any recommendation or diagnosing here. So.
Nope. Nope.
All right, that's our physical and emotional connection and how to use BioTouch with that. And thank you, Bev, for teaching us.
Thank you. Thanks,
And
everyone.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you all next month. Take care, all.